Blog Talk Radio.
You are listening to Passing Shots with Pete Ziebron on the Pro 10 Radio Network, a production of Pro 10 Global Sports. Enjoy the show.
And good afternoon, those of you in the West, and good evening, those of you in the East. Welcome to the second season of Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. Pete Ziebron from Tennis Acumen, joined this evening with Jared Pine, who has the blog Second Serve, secondserve.blogspot.com. Jared is also on Twitter at jaredpine.com and is also a student at Azusa Pacific University in Southern California. Welcome to the show this evening, Jared.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Pete. It's really exciting to be here, and I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Plenty to talk about, obviously, with day one of the Australian Open just getting underway yesterday. And before that, Jared, we had a lot of activity on the ATP with respect to tournaments in Australia, in New Zealand, in India, et cetera. And some of the winners that we saw were Roger Federer in Brisbane, Stan Wawrinka in Chennai. We saw a great, nice opportunity with respect to Victor Troicki taking out Vesely as well. What were some of the things that jumped out at you with respect to some of the warm-up tournaments or the 250 tournaments leading into the Australian Open this year?
Yeah, that first week was an interesting one where Federer gets the title in Brisbane after losing to Hewitt in the final there last year. Then Wawrinka repeats in Chennai, same result he had last year leading up to the Australian Open. So maybe something good there for him as he gets ready for the Australian Open. And then first-time winner, Yuri Vesely in Auckland. And Troicki, another big step in his comeback from the anti-doping suspension, gets his second career title as a qualifier in Sydney. A very impressive result there for him. Gets him back to 54 in the world now. So a lot of interesting stuff in just the 2 weeks leading up to the Australian Open already.
Yeah, great story by Troicki. Obviously, people can make of that what they want, but full credit to him for putting in the work. Obviously, he was playing futures tournaments, challenger and tournaments, late in the year last year to be able to put himself in a position to be able to compete here, and here he is as a qualifier winning a tournament, and he got a win yesterday, ironically, against Vesely in the first round at the Australian Open. But this is I think a former ATP number 12 in the world, playing with a boatload of confidence. Obviously, some time off, some time away, was able to rest and to train properly, and I don't necessarily think anybody wants to see him in any draw going forward. But I also want to ask you about Lucas Pouille from France, who, Jared, early 2013 he got knocked out in the first round in both of the hardcourt tournaments in France in the springtime. But he had very impressive score lines, I think, against Troicki and Beneteau, and then sort of went away, but made some noise late in the year last year. Got in as a lucky loser in the tournament last week. Made a very impressive run. What were your thoughts on Lucas Pouille?
Yeah, he had a nice win over Fognini towards the end of last year in Paris. He's an exciting player. For a while there, he was one of the only teenagers inside the top 200. Now we're seeing a lot of teenagers inside the top 200. But he's been kind of the leader of this group of guys who are 20 or younger. He's an up-and-comer. Just definitely someone to keep an eye on as things continue. An exciting player for France. A lot of talent has come out of that country over the years. And here's another one continuing that tradition. And so I think, just as the years go on, this is a guy that we want to keep our eye on. He shouldn't be sneaking up on anyone at this point.
Yeah, great points. In fact, he's always an interesting matchup when you have countrymen against countrymen. He opens with 17th seed Gael Monfils in the first round later on today. That should be a very intriguing matchup. Monfils going in as a heavy favorite, but you never know with you have countrymen versus countrymen. Plus, Pui has plenty of play under his belt already this year. And before we talk a little bit more about some of the youngsters going forward, Jared, want to talk about some of the people who are missing here in Australia this year. Unfortunately, Juan Martin Del Potro was part of the main draw. He had a very interesting, intriguing matchup with Jerzy Janowicz that unfortunately is not going to happen since Del Po had to pull out yet again with wrist situations. A couple other big names that are out, Marin Cilic, U.S. Open winner last year. He is not there. Joe-Wilfried Tsonga is not. Florian Mayer, who is a dangerous floater, is not there. And even yesterday, Tommy Robredo retires in the sixth game in the first set yesterday. So, we talk, a lot of guys talking about the season's too long, and yet some of them play in India per se. But, Tsonga going on saying I probably shouldn't have played Davis Cup, and just a overall unfortunate situation with Del Po. Your thoughts on these are some pretty big names, including a couple of major title winners who are not going to be in competition.
Yeah, Sock's not playing either. In this tournament, he's out for a little bit, and it's a tough grind. It's almost all year you're playing. You basically get a 1 month off season, but that's kind of what's necessary because these are professional athletes, and if they're not playing in tournaments, they're not getting money, and so it's a little bit necessary for the season to be this long. I think some of the players are very smart about planning many off seasons, whether it's in February or right after Wimbledon. They'll take a few weeks off and just let their bodies recuperate. And that's one of the things I think a lot more players need to do and take advantage of those opportunities. Just take a break, take time away from the tour. I was interested in what happened with Robredo retiring after not even completing the first set. One of the nice things that's been going on in the ATP lately is prize money raises for people who lose in the first round. So basically these guys who aren't ranked as high are still able to make enough money to get by, to continue playing tournaments. But the paychecks have gotten really high at the Grand Slams for these first rounds. And what we're starting to see are guys who know they're injured, but they'll go to the tournament anyways, start their first-round match, and then retire knowing that they're going to get the paycheck anyways, instead of giving the opportunity to, say, a lucky loser, an alternate. In Robredo's case, he took a spot away from another player. I believe it was Sam Querrey in this case.
Wow.
But this is an interesting situation we have going on where guys are going into tournaments knowing they have no shot at winning, and they're just going because they know they can pick up a paycheck. So I'm curious if there is a solution to this, if the ITF or ATP are going to try to do something to solve this problem, because it's everyone loses when Robredo retires in that first set.
Right. No, that's a great call, and when Del Po pulled out, obviously he had every intention on playing and just wasn't able to go. That's a different scenario. But along those lines, it's changed a little bit where the highest ranking man who lost in the third round of qualifying isn't automatically in, and that they've taken some of the tanking aspect away there. It's a lottery basically between four. But you're absolutely right. The absence of Tommy Robredo taking a seat away potentially from Querrey or someone else, and it certainly is a domino effect with respect to someone going there and obviously having no shot at winning the tournament, but obviously not even coming close to even completing your first round match. That I think you're absolutely right. That needs to be re-examined not only on the ATP but WTA tours as well. Very, very unfortunate scenario there.
Yeah, and what it does is it leaves this huge hole in the draw now. We're having a second-round match between Malek Jaziri and Edouard Royer-Vasselin.
Right.
One of those guys is going to be in the third round, and, there's no seed in that section of the draw anymore. So huge opportunity there for those guys, but perhaps an opportunity that maybe should have gone to someone else who earned it, really.
Yeah, good point. Your just thoughts about Tsonga and Cilic and even Delpo, and I'll go back to about 10, 11 months ago when Del Potro was playing a tournament where I believe he retired from a match in singles, and then I think it was either later that day or the next day he actually did play doubles, and that was a real head scratcher, and it just seemed that cost him extra significant time on the shelf. Obviously, Del Potro competed this year in 2015, losing to Kukushkin in a couple of tiebreakers after winning a match. But just want to get your thoughts overall on when we might be able to see him come back, if he might be able to come back all the way back. I never was able to get clear. He said he wanted to come back from the U.S. hard courts, and when I posed that question saying, are we talking hard courts in the U.S. hard courts in March or in August? And nobody was able to give that answer. So your thoughts on Juan Martín?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we can see him back soon. In tennis, it's awfully tough knowing what's going on with guys when they're injured because they're not part of a team. They're just individuals, and so there's no real way of knowing what's going on with the guy when they're injured. But Delpo in general does a good job of keeping his fans updated. He's pretty honest about where he's at. And so hopefully we'll see him in Indian Wells at the tournament where he's had some success before. And, yeah, I think he's someone that's good for the tour. So having him back sooner is never bad news.
Yeah, great point. I completely agree. Well, we wish you well, certainly, Juan Martín Del Potro. Hope you can certainly make it back for the hardcourt swing in March rather than August in the U.S., March 1st. And some interesting notes in qualifying there, Jared, in Australian Open qualifying. A couple of older guys. 36-year-old Michael Russell qualifies for his 34th major. He did lose yesterday, tough four-setter to Goffin. 35-year-old Jan Hrnic from Czech Republic makes his 21st major overall. And then on the other side of the spectrum, a couple of youngsters from France, Emer and locally. Your thoughts on any observations on what jumped out at you during Australian Open qualifying this year?
Yeah, I mean, exciting stuff for Michael Russell to make it to another Grand Slam. These guys, Hrnic and Russell, you don't know how many more they're going to play, so it's a little bit of a scenario where, enjoy it while they can. Obviously, Russell lost in the first round yesterday to David Goffin. But just exciting to see those guys playing in one more tournament. And then with guys like Emer and Lecali, this is the first chance for a lot of tennis fans to see them play. This is the first big test they've had now that they're on the senior tour off away from the juniors. So those are also guys to keep your eye on in this tournament, along with Pui. Just a lot of young, good talent, and a chance to see them here. They're all kind of breaking through at once, this group of teenagers and 20-year-olds, very young guys. They're breaking through right all at the same time. And, it's nice to see them all trying to one-up each other. So those are all matches that I'm going to be keeping my eye on today as they begin. Kyle Edmonds, another one who qualified, the 20-year-old from Great Britain. He's going to be playing against Steve Johnson. That'll be a fun match to watch.
Yeah, and I mentioned the two guys we mentioned are both Frenchmen, and I know, Jared, in your research and a lot of your writings on secondserve.blogspot.com and that you post on Twitter as well at Jared Pine, you are you do a lot of research with respect to particular countries and where they stand and who are some of the emerging countries and up-and-comers. Obviously, France has a nice stable of players up and coming. Spain is present right now, but what do you? Is there anything that maybe emerged with respect to this year's qualifying that maybe caught your eye that jumped out a little bit more so than maybe what you didn't expect? This young group of France has kind of surprised me. I've been looking at what's been going on at France, and they're getting older. The Benito, Simone, Tsonga,
Gasquet, Monfils. These are all guys that are getting older and going to be moving away from the tour soon. But this young group has kind of come up, and they're getting ready to kind of take that place, although Per and Ruffin have been disappointments in a lot of regards. Now there's just this other group of Frenchmen coming in. And so French tennis is going to be okay, I think, in the long run. There could be a little bit of a dip 3-4 years from now where they're not powerhouse that they are now. So, yeah, interesting things going on with French tennis there.
Yeah, it's great comments there. I agree. It's nice to see. They certainly have a very good system there. A little bit somewhat controversial, if you will, in some cases with the women, with Bartoli not being able to play Wimbledon the Olympics under the French flag. But they have a system that they have in place, and they know it well, and we're seeing some of the progress with respect to the youngsters on the ATP side. Good comments there. And obviously, this is we're coming up on day 2. First ball is going to be in about 45 minutes here, day 2 in Australia. But we had a full day, full half of tennis, and one side of the draw on the men's side yesterday, Jared, and 10 5-set matches overall. Probably one of the things that people were most concerned about and satisfied with, if you will. Rafael Nadal had a tough customer in Mikhail Yuzhny. He got through that pretty comfortably, and we mentioned the Troitsky-Vasily match. Both guys won titles on Saturday. Troitsky got through that, and as we were talking before we got on air a little bit, Kokkinakis took out Gulbis, saving 4 match points, and Nick Kyrgios also won. A lot of Australian men advancing to the second round. I know that you watched quite a bit of tennis yesterday and into the early mornings here. What are your biggest takeaways from yesterday, day 1 in Australia?
Yeah, you said it. Great day for Australia. Sam Groth was another one. Bernard Tomic. They both had nice wins. So a great day for the hometown guys, which is nice to see. That means the crowd's going to be more into it each day as the tournament continues. That was fun. And Nadal with the win kind of put to doubt some of those questions. He's, as is well noted, he's very good at talking down expectations. And I think he proved a little bit against Mikhail Yuzhny that that's all he was doing was talking down his expectations, that physically he's fine, he's ready to go. I don't know if he's a title contender, but he's not that far away from his peak and how well we know he can play. The other match that stuck out to me was, as we mentioned, Troitsky-Vasily match. Both guys came in with long winning streaks. Troitsky played very well in that match, had struggled a little bit in that second set, but overall played very well to finish that out. And, it's tough coming into a tournament after just winning a title. He got to Melbourne the day before, but now he has a win. He'll have the day off today, a chance to kind of settle in Melbourne, and maybe he can make a run because he's certainly the hottest player in this draw coming into the tournament. He has Meyer in the next round, a winnable match there, and then a tough one against Berdych if he does get through that. But that'll be interesting to see how he does.
Yeah, good point. I don't mean to dwell on it because obviously Nadal got the win yesterday, but it just seems when Rafael Nadal has been out of action for an extended period of time, it usually takes him a tournament or a match or so to get back underway. Obviously, the shock loss to Barrera in Doha after winning the first set comfortably, I would think I'd want to see if you agree we can put to rest any questions, concerns about Rafael Nadal with respect to what he showed us yesterday, correct?
Yes, and I think it's typical for him not to go 100% in those 250 tune-up tournaments. His record is significantly lower at those particular tournaments than at, say, a 1,000, where the fields are even tougher, and it's also best 2 out of 3. He likes to save his best tournament, his best level of competition for the Grand Slams, and I think that's what we're going to see here. He has a nice section of the draw where he's not really getting tested until, maybe the second week with potentially Gasquet or Anderson. So he's going to have some chance to get some match play, and he's going to be ready for those tests when he gets there.
Yeah, completely agree. That's sort of typical Rafa at this point. We've seen it before, and it happened yet again. sort of a shock loss, especially how he conducted himself in the first set against Barrère, who's been on tour for quite some time. But Rafael Nadal is locked and loaded and put, I think, all the critics to sleep with respect to his dominant performance over Yuzhny yesterday in Melbourne. And Jared, we're coming up on a break, and when we come back, we're going to have analysis of the top half of the draw, the Djokovic quarter, the Wawrinka quarter. We'll head back into the bottom half of the draw, who got underway yesterday, and Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network with Pete Ziebron and Jared Pine. We'll be back right after this.
Do you know how fast you were going, son?
Call me Ed.
Do you know how fast you were going, Ed?
You mean exactly?
Yes, exactly.
No, not exactly. How fast?
Fast.
Faster?
You were going very fast.
Fast is my job, officer.
Fast is your job?
Yes, sir.
What kind of job?
I deliver, sir.
What do you deliver?
The world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
I thought Jimmy John's had the world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
Jimmy John's does have the world's greatest gourmet sandwiches.
So you deliver for Jimmy John's?
I deliver for Jimmy John's.
So do you always deliver fast?
I always deliver fast.
How fast?
I deliver subs so fast you freak.
It's not smart to freak a cop, son.
You didn't order Jimmy John's sub, sir.
So if I did order a Jimmy John's sub, when would I get it?
Now.
What if I don't want it now?
Then call later.
Or I can pick it up myself.
Or you can pick it up yourself.
Because I'm pretty fast, too.
I'm sure you are, sir.
Very fast.
I believe you, sir.
Faster than you.
No way, sir.
Way faster.
In your dreams.
You dissing me, son?
No, sir, I'm polite.
Fast and polite?
Very polite and very, very fast.
Is that a challenge, son?
No, sir, it's a fact.
Let's burn rubber, kid.
It wouldn't be fair.
Why not?
You've got a fully blown V8 Camaro with slicks and headers.
So?
I've got a 10-speed bike.
I'll let you off with a warning.
They try and make it seem like they want to protect kids from smoking. But in reality, they've been targeting children for decades. They used to make and sponsor cartoons to market cigarettes. But despite these shows being popular among children, they claimed that these cartoons were for an adult audience. Then, they paid movies to feature their brands. Some of your favorite superhero movies have characters that the industry actually paid to smoke on screen. One industry exec said that,
"We must continue to exploit new opportunities to get cigarettes on screen and into the hands of smokers."
And now they carefully place posters and other ads at convenience stores and push new products that look and taste just like candy. Who eats candy and sees ads that are 3 feet off the ground? Come on. So you want to know why I'm tobacco free? Because I don't want their marketing to reach my little sister. That's why. Learn more at whydoyouthink.com. That's the letter whydoyouthink.com.
To celebrate the not normal Mini Cooper, we hired an expert to tell you about Mini telepathically.
Greetings. Relax and listen to my mind. The Mini Cooper hardtop comes with 37 mpg and co-cart handling.
Wait, that's not telepathy.
Listen again. The bigger four-door Mini Countryman has seating for 5.
Okay, you're just whispering.
You're still paying me for this.
Come see the 37 mpg Mini Cooper hardtop and the bigger Mini Countryman today. Visit miniusa.com/info for MPG details.
Hi, this is Johan Crick, and you're listening to the Pro 10 Radio Network.
And welcome back to Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. Pete Ziebron and Jared Pine getting all set to take you through analysis of the Australian Open quarters. So we're going to start, Jared, with the analysis and discussion about Djokovic's quarter at the very top. And obviously Novak Djokovic, the odds-on favorite by plenty of people to win the 2015 Australian Open, has a pretty comfortable first round. But I want to talk about some other matches that might jump out at us. We've got a couple, actually, unfortunately, one that's not going to happen, namely Juan Martín del Potro against Jerzy Janowicz. Probably the match of the first round in the ATP is not going to happen. But we'll shift gears to a match that we highlighted in the first segment, namely Lucas Pouille of France against 17th-seeded Gaël Monfils of France, the winner to take on most likely Janowicz. How do you see the Pouille-Monfils matchup?
You know, Monfils is so talented, and I think he really gets up for these slams. That's one of the problems with Monfils in his career has been the inconsistency, and sometimes he doesn't come out and perform as well as he can. I think this is a Grand Slam. He's going to be ready to go, and this will be his season debut for 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's going to come out and be ready for this and do well here. He has a nice little section of the draw. Janowicz in the second round to be a tough one. But Lopez is a beatable opponent. You know, Monfils could be looking good to make a run here. But he has a tricky customer in the first round in Puy.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Again, Puy has done very well the back end of last year, and obviously the first part of 2015. Plus, always it just seems to be countrymen versus countrymen, countrywoman versus countrywoman. Just an added dynamic there that throws a wrench into things, almost more so for the underdog, if you will. I think the favorite maybe is trying too hard, unless they're an overwhelming favorite. But yeah, another couple of matches in the top half I want to talk to you about, Jared. Namely, 13th seed Roberto Bautista Agut from Spain taking on Dominic Thiem. This probably should be a bigger matchup than it is. Unfortunately, I believe Thiem is coming into this match not necessarily feeling well from off-season sickness, and I don't know if he'll be able to give 100% effort, but want to see how your thoughts are on this one.
Yeah, Thiem was one of the guys I had coming into the tournament as being one of the dangerous unseeded players, and here he is drawing a seed early on. But Bautista Agut is so solid, so tough to upset him. He has such flat ground strokes, and he's surprisingly consistent with such flat ground strokes. But that whole draw is very interesting. You got Gilles Mueller, who played well last week, Big Sur and John Isner. We already mentioned McCauley. A lot of good players there in that section of the draw. And whoever wins that little section is going to come out and play Djokovic.
Yeah, one other one that jumped out sort of. I know he hasn't had great success at majors in a long time, Benjamin Becker, but he's Mike Beneteau, who obviously a seasoned vet. Any hiccups, any troubles for Beneteau against Becker at this point?
Yeah, Becker had a great year last year, 2014, but so far in 2015 has struggled. 2 first-round losses to start the year coming into this tournament. So I wasn't too high on him when the draw came out to pull off this upset, but Beneteau is one of those seeded players who is vulnerable. Becker could make that tricky for him, but I like Beneteau to get the win there.
Okay, and bookending this, the top end of that quarter is Djokovic, number 1. The bottom half is Milos Raonic, number 8. Is this who you're looking at for a quarterfinal, Djokovic against Raonic, or someone else?
Yeah, when I filled out my draw, I put Djokovic against Raonic in the quarterfinals. For Djokovic, as you look at the whole draw, it's nice to see Rafa, Murray, and Federer on the other side. You'd say that's a good draw for him. But you look at his 2 weaknesses in terms of opponents are guys with one-handed backhand and guys with big serves, and he's coming up against potentially Isner and then Raonic, 2 guys with big serves, and then maybe Wawrinka and Federer in the last rounds, 2 guys with one-handed backhands. So this draw for Djokovic as far as seeds looks pretty good, but matchup-wise, these are the kind of guys Djokovic tends to struggle with. So he's going to have to earn it if he does come through as the favorite. He had the three title streak snapped last year, and so I'm sure he's hungry to get that back, especially with the number 1 ranking at stake to some degree in this tournament. He could potentially lose it if he doesn't get through to the quarterfinals at least. Yeah, this is an interesting tournament for Djokovic as far as how the matchups are looking.
Yeah, and we talked about some of the youngsters, coming through qualifying, and there are four younger guys in this particular quarter. Locally, Thiem, who we mentioned, Puy, who we mentioned, and Emer, who we also mentioned. We talked a little bit about Thiem's matchup against Bautista Agut as well as Puy against Monfils, but any of these youngsters, hard to call Thiem a youngster because he's been on tour for a little bit, but he is. And any of these guys going to get a first-round win, do you think?
I have McCauley as the only one getting a first-round win, and even that one will be tough. He is Andreas Hader-Maurer from Austria. Hopefully you can get through that. That'll be interesting to see. Yeah,
good call. I agree. Unfortunate for Thiem not feeling 100%, but again, he's got a very, very tough customer in Bautista Agut there. So, Jared, we're going to move on to the second quarter of the top half, the Stan Wawrinka quarter. Everybody's saying that this is by far the weakest quarter of the draw, and a couple of very good matchups that jump out at me, namely Vasek Pospisil and Sam Querrey is very evenly matched. We'll talk about that one, as well as a little bit of a different scenario. Almagro and Nishikori being the number 5 seed, but they have split their 2 previous matches. Why don't we start out talking a bit about Pospisil and Querrey and what you think about that one?
Yeah, that's two big guys with big serves, big games. Love playing on the hard courts. They prefer playing in North America. They tend to struggle outside of Canada, USA. But Querrey did have some good results in Australia last year, beat Golbis. And Pospisil is certainly capable of finding that kind of form, even in a best-of-5 format. You look at the draws they're in. Dolgopolov is coming with some injuries. Vanini never really plays well on a hard court. So outside of those two, maybe Gojovcek, it's a pretty weak section of the draw. And I think the winner of Querrey and Pospisil has a great chance to make it to the second week.
I completely agree. The winner of that, Dolgopolov, seemingly always a question mark, not 100% coming in, and Fognini, he's not playing his best either. I agree that the winner of that match could be advanced plus 2 more rounds just by getting through today.
Yeah, and then the other one you mentioned was Nishikori Almagro. Almagro, we really haven't seen him yet on this comeback. He played 1 match last week and lost it, so we don't know too much what to expect out of him. Nishikori is someone who could make a run at this tournament. He's played so well at the U.S. Open. I think he showed us in that semifinal against Djokovic in the U.S. Open, the final in Madrid against Nadal, that when he's playing his best, he's as good as anyone on tour. He's right there with the big 4 when he's at his best. And that's always the question mark. Is he healthy? Is he able to find that form? I think he's someone who has a chance to win the title here this week or this fortnight. It's just a matter of, can he find that form and find it consistently? He's going to have to string together a few nice wins with potentially meeting Ferrer, Wawrinka, and then if he does get to semifinals, it looks like he'd face Djokovic. He has to be able to consistently play well, and that's been tough for him in his career. Yeah,
a lot of people are suggesting he might be able to win a major in 2015. I'm not seeing that in 2015. It's certainly possible in 2016. For me, and no disrespect, but it's almost like I kind of lump him into the Monfils and Tsonga category with respect to, let's not forget Madrid last year. He was drumming the hall and had to not finish that match, which was very unfortunate. And it's just, he mentioned there, does he have it? So, this particular, the second quarter, bottom quarter of the top half, we've got Stan Wawrinka at the top and Nishikori at the bottom. Is this? Do you see these guys as the quarterfinal or something else?
Yeah, once again, I got the 2 top seeds in the section advancing to the quarterfinals. Wawrinka has, I said, the easiest draw out of anyone as soon as I saw the draw. So I think he is a very straightforward path to the quarterfinals. Nishikori's is a little bit more tricky. He'll have to get through Ferrer, but he beat Ferrer twice right at the tail end of the 2014 season. And I think that's a matchup that works out well in Nishikori's favor. So I don't see him tripping up anywhere unless, some sort of injury problem pops up. He doesn't handle the heat pretty well typically. So, unless something like that happens, I think he's in the quarterfinals too against Wawrinka.
Okay, I'm going a little different. I'm going to Stan, obviously, on the top of that. I'm actually going to take Ferrer to. I think the 2 will meet, Ferrer and Nishikori. I think Ferrer, the ultimate warrior, if you will. I think I don't know if Kay is going to be all the way there, ready to play, and I think Ferrer is going to wear him down. I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go with Wawrinka and David Ferrer in the quarterfinals of that. So one of our questions we'll talk about a little later on that I'm getting ahead of myself, who's the first top 8 seed to lose? My choice would be Nishikori here, and we'll talk. We'll get your take on that as well. But Jared, going to the bottom half of the draw, and again, we didn't really necessarily have any youngsters in that particular section in Wawrinka's quarter, and play that got underway yesterday, Rafael Nadal's quarter. He is the number 3 seed. He's at the bottom of that particular quarter. Obviously, he did win in advance and will play Smichek of the U.S. Sitting on top of that particular quarter is Tomas Berdych, obviously a Grand Slam finalist who did play Nadal at the Wimbledon final. But a lot of bigger names here, especially in the top half of this particular quarter. Some very intriguing. Actually, all 4 matchups in the top half of this quarter and the second round are very, very interesting, very intriguing. But want to get your thoughts on play yesterday in this particular quarter. Anything that jumped out at you? Any surprises, or your thoughts and analysis from yesterday?
Yeah, we haven't talked about Jürgen Melzer yet. Melzer was a qualifier. He's a former top 10 player. He's had good results at slams. He tends to play better on clay, but he's dangerous on hard courts too. He's a lefty, which always makes him a tricky opponent. He beat Victor Estrella Burgos yesterday, a nice win there, and he's going to face Berdych in the next round. And the other one, the match of the year so far was Kokkinakis beating Ernest Gulbis in front of a packed crowd on show court 3. What a great match there, saving the 4-set points. An absolute battle there in the 5th set. Kokkinakis eventually came through, living up to some of the hype now. And, once again, it's nice seeing these Australians doing well at their home tournament. They tend to play well at home every year. And hopefully this will be a springboard into more success as the year goes on. Last year, I thought the Australians got off to a great start in January and then lost all the momentum in February. So hopefully we'll see these guys, Kokkinakis, Kyrgios, Tomic, hopefully we'll see them doing well when they come out to Indian Wells or whatever tournaments they're playing in February.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what Kokkinakis, whose game, in your opinion, does his game, who does that most resemble, if anybody, or any parts of his game?
Boy, he's so different from everyone else. It's so hard to compare him to someone. That's not something I thought of. He's very much a unique player. He's himself. I think he prides himself on being unique more than anything. So I think it'd be doing him a disservice to try to compare him to someone. I just enjoy his game while we watch him. He's going to be fun to watch, and he's still young, and he's going to develop, particularly on that serve. I think his serve, if he can start hitting that a little bit harder, flattening it out more often, he's going to be dangerous as he goes on. I was very impressed with what he did against Gulbis.
Yeah, and a couple other names, one that we haven't mentioned yet in this quarter, and given maybe the question mark in quotations with respect to Nadal, tough, he didn't play well against Barrera, and a tough customer, and Yuzhny obviously got through that. But, some people mentioning Kevin Anderson, who's in his little section coming up, could be a round of 16 match there, Jared. Let's talk about this particular quarter, Rafael Nadal's quarter. It is Nadal, if seeds hold true. Nadal and Berdych at the very top. That's how I have it coming through. And actually, my dark horse, I'm in essence doubling down on, I'm actually taking Tomas Berdych to come through this quarter to repeat his semifinal appearance of last year when he lost to Wawrinka. I have him taking out Nadal in the quarterfinal. Your thoughts on this quarter, if you have that, or what names you have, and what and why?
Yeah, Anderson's the guy that I'm looking at that's interesting. He struggled to get past Diego Schwartzman yesterday. He was in control of that match and just wasn't holding serve as regularly as you would expect out of him. And now he has a tough matchup against Ricardas Berankis, who had a nice 5-set win over Sisling yesterday. That was a fun one to watch. But I think Anderson can make a run. And I think, actually, if he gets that round of 16 matchup with Nadal, I have him getting through that. You look at Anderson, he typically does very well against left-handed players. Left-handed players big servers tend to struggle against left-handed players, but there's something about what Anderson does with his second serve that makes him extremely dangerous to left-handed players, more so than, say, Isner or Karlovic or Raonic. And I think this is actually a good matchup for Anderson. I think he's going to get past Nadal just because of the way he handles lefties. And then he'll face Berdych in the quarterfinals if that goes through as I predicted it will. And Berdych is someone who's had Anderson's number throughout his career. Anderson still hasn't beaten Berdych yet. I believe the head-to-head is 12-0. So very one-sided there. So it'd be a Cinderella story if Anderson did, in fact, beat Nadal and then end the streak against Berdych. But I think Berdych keeps it going. I also have Berdych reaching the semifinals.
Interesting. We both go with the number 7, Berdych, and I get you have a little bit of a different roundabout way. I've got him with a different tougher customer, Nadal, and you've got him against somebody who he is a nemesis of Anderson. But I really liked your analysis of the Anderson against Nadal, how he's more favorable matchup as opposed to some of the other guys. So that's very interesting, very intriguing. Certainly hope that we get that round 16 match, and could be some very interesting activity here in the third quarter of the draw. And before we get to that, also Kokkinakis, we talked a little bit about. Do you see him going in further? He's got a countryman Groff in the second round. Do you see him as possibly, could have another countryman, Bernie Tomic, but he's got a tough match against Kohlschreiber. Let's talk a little bit about those matchups, if Jared, with respect to the Kohlschreiber-Tomic match, as well as Kokkinakis and Groff. Your thoughts there?
I have Tomic beating Kohlschreiber. Kohlschreiber's been off to a slow start this year. Hasn't played well, but did get the nice win over Paul-Henri Mathieu. And so we have Tomic and Kohlschreiber there. I think Tomic is going to get through that. And then Groth Kokkinakis, I have Groth winning there. He has a great serve. Obviously holds the record for fastest serve. And he has this reliable weapon that he can go to. And so when the pressure gets high, he can always rely on his serve to help him through that. And I think that'll be a huge factor when the crowd starts to get into it and the tensions rise. So I think Groff will win that one. And then between Tomic and Groff, I have Tomic winning.
Yeah, you still there, Jared? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, I lost that.
Okay, is everything okay?
Yeah, we're good. The call just dropped. You were talking about Tomic and Kohlschreiber. Apologize. Sorry about that.
Okay. I was just saying I think Tomic will get through against Kohlschreiber, who struggled early in the year, didn't have a great end to 2014. And then between Groth and Kokkinakis, I think Groth has the advantage there, just having a serve that he can rely on. I think having a reliable weapon is such a huge factor when the tensions begin to rise and the crowd gets into it, because that'll be a close match. So I have Tomic and Groth getting through, and then Tomic beating Groth there in the round of 32 to reach the second week at his home slam.
Oh, good call. I actually have Kohlschreiber over Tomic, and I'm still undecided at this point on Groth and Kokkinakis. So I will figure that out before they toss the ball up. But this is a very interesting quarter, and someone who is also very interested in what might develop is Roger Federer, who is sitting in the bottom quarter of the bottom half. And obviously, you mentioned earlier at our show, Djokovic is at the top half. Doesn't have Murray, doesn't have Fed, doesn't have Nadal in his half, and right now we've got obviously the big four. When they're not 1, 2, 3, 4, something else happens. Usually somebody ends up in a quarter with somebody else, and this has happened with Andy Murray and Roger Federer in the bottom quarter. And obviously, like Nadal's quarter, we had play underway yesterday as well. Both Federer and Murray did win. Probably some of the bigger, we had a few 5-setters here, quite a few actually in this particular quarter. none bigger than the that ended early this morning in Australia. Nick Kyrgios taking out Delbonis, coming good in the fifth set. He's going to have a very difficult match in Ivo Karlovic in the next round. But this particular quarter, Jared, again, Murray and Federer, anything else, and Dimitrov's in there as well, anybody else jump out at you with respect to who might make some noise here?
Yeah, I thought David Goffin would be able to do well in this tournament, but then he just gets this brutal draw. You know, he got through Michael Russell, but next he has Marcos Bagdas, who's about as tough as it gets, a former finalist here in Australia Open. But for an unseeded player, that's awfully tough. And then Dimitrov, and if he gets that, he'd have to go through Murray and Federer. So just a horrible draw for Goffin, even though he's a great player, someone who's going to have a good year. He's someone who has a chance to make the top 10 soon just because all of his points that he has as a defender at the end of the year. So if he does well on the clay and spring, his ranking is going to shoot up a lot. But unfortunate here that he had a...
No, I agree, and it's a very, very tough draw. I mean, as an easy skate, if you will, as Wawrinka has, there's a lot of big names here in this particular quarter here, Federer and Murray leading the pack. But, we could have a Fed either against Kyrgios or Karlovic in the round of 16, and obviously that's just to get to the quarterfinal against most likely either Dimitrov or Murray. But, Murray's got his hands full with Matosevic, who he should get through that, but you never know. And then Klesen, who, interesting, Jared, 2 years ago seeded 27 at the Australian Open. Last year gets in the main draw as a lucky loser. This year seeded 32. Big roller coaster, guy with a big game, should get through his second round match against Sousa, and probably will face off with Murray. But I've got to go with Fed and Murray as a quarterfinal with Federer winning this. But as we mentioned, a lot of big names in the process, especially for Murray. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd actually say not so fast on that Klesen pick. I think Sousa could challenge in there. I actually have Sousa winning that match. They're both 25 years old, so relatively young. So that'll be an interesting match to see how that plays out. And then I'm hoping we see the Murray-Dimitrov rematch. That's developing into a really good rivalry. They met in Brisbane a couple years ago in the final. Then they met in Acapulco. They've also met in Wimbledon last year. So that's developing into a really good rivalry. I hope we can see that again. But I think Murray will win that one. And then, I have Murray and Federer into the quarterfinals. So no upsets in this section either for me. The one upset I did have was Kyrgios beating Robredo, although, of course, Robredo retired. So, so I think Kyrgios now, his path is opened up. Although Karlovic, it's hard to look past that one. Karlovic played very well in Doha, beat Djokovic, almost took out Ferrer. Looked very impressive in that first round, beating Ruben Bemelman in straight set. Kyrgios does have a little bit of a back issue that he carried into the tournament. He had a medical timeout yesterday. So Karlovic is probably the slight favorite going into that one. But I think Kyrgios in front of the crowd, they're going to get behind him. He's going to get excited. I think he could be able to get through that, and I'm hoping we see that Federer-Kyrgios matchup. But in the end, I have Federer beating Murray in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, me as well. Obviously, a roundabout way could be for Andy Murray with all the big names in his area there, and Federer most likely will either have to take out Kyrgios or Karlovic to get to the Murray match, which will be a very intriguing round 3 match. And Jared, we're going to take another break right now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about our final picks, our semifinal picks, as well as some dark horses, as well as a few other people who might be able to cause some noise, make some damage in the field, and then we'll just have our WTA picks, semifinals and winners, and a dark horse there as well. And we're going to come back and finish up segment 3 on Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network right after this.
Shop TennisExpress.com and gear up with the apparel and footwear the pros will be wearing down under. For that stylish look, try Maria Sharapova's Premier Maria tunic dress and half-zip training top. Shop all new Nike gear at TennisExpress.com.
New York, the toughest of the majors and impossible to predict the champion. Rafael Nadal's got to be the favorite with his Babolat Aero Pro Drive GT and Nike Air Cord Ballistic 2.3s. Then there's Roger Federer with his Wilson BLX 6-1 Tour and Nike Lunar Vapor Tours. Don't count out Andy Murray. He's on a hot streak right now with his Head U-Tech Radical Pro and Adidas Barricade 6. Well, I don't know who's going to win the Open this year, but I do know I can get all the gear the pros wear at Tennis Warehouse, the ultimate equipment website.
The Dane racket is solid inside. It's not a hollowed out racket at all. So when the ball hits the racket, it doesn't wobble. It holds firm in your hand. But because of the thin beam, it really moves through the air effortlessly, and it's been no adjustment at all. It's a seamless transition for me. Looking recently for a racket with a little bigger sweet spot, a little bit more power, but I didn't want to give up the control that I need. That's what the Dane has done for me. So if you want to try out a Dane racket, go exclusively online to tenniswarehouse.com.
And welcome back to the final segment of Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. Pete Ziebron of Tennis Acumen and Jared Pine of the Second Serve joining you this evening. And Jared, we've broken down the Australian Open 2015. Now it's time for our selections of the semifinalists as well as the eventual winner. And we'll talk a little bit about some dark horses, namely our primary dark horse and some guys ranked, seated between 11 to 20 who we think will go furthest, and then as well in the 20s in the seeds who will go the furthest, and then the unseeded player who will get the furthest, as well as the first top 8 seed to lose and why that's going to happen. But first, let's talk about our semifinals and what's going to happen. You go first, please.
Well, I think we both have Djokovic and Wawrinka on the top half reaching the semifinal. What a rematch that's going to be. They've met each of the last 2 years in Australia. Had a great match in 2013 that Djokovic just barely got through. They also had a great match in U.S. Open that Djokovic barely got through once again. And then finally, Wawrinka gets him back last year in the quarterfinals, ends his winning streak in Melbourne, and goes on to win his first career Grand Slam title. And so that was an exciting year last year, seeing what Wawrinka was doing. Can he find that magic again against Djokovic? I just don't think so. I think if you look at what the matchup has been about outside of those three incredible 5-set matches, it's been pretty one-sided where Djokovic has dominated. So I got Djokovic beating Wawrinka, and then on the bottom half, Federer against Berdych. Once again, Federer just owns that head-to-head there. It's pretty one-sided. They had a great match on the blue clay in Madrid. Interestingly, that was one of the matches where Berdych had played pretty well against Federer, but I got Federer getting through that to reach his first Grand Slam final on a hard court since 2010. So it's been 5 years since Federer has reached the final of a Grand Slam on a hard court, and I think he's going to end that drought.
Yeah, so you're going Federer over Djokovic then?
In the final, I got Djokovic over Federer. I got Djokovic winning the final. That was an epic in Wimbledon that we saw last year. But Djokovic ended up being the better player. And I think especially on hard court, Federer's one-handed backhand is going to be less of an issue for Djokovic on a hard court. And I think Djokovic gets through in the final to win his 8th Grand Slam of his career.
I have the carbon copy, Djokovic over Wawrinka at the top and Federer over Berdych on the bottom, with Djokovic beating Federer as well. Novak Djokovic plays very, very well in Australia. The last 2 points against Stan in the quarters, round of 16, I couldn't believe it last year, but, Stan took that, parlayed it. Obviously, Stan was knocking on the door in general, but especially against Djokovic. So all credit to him. But I agree with you, Jared. That's not going to happen this year. Djokovic gets the job done. We'll talk about our primary dark horse. So it may be the same selection here. And by dark horse, I'm mentioning somebody who hasn't won a major, and I'm going with Berdych. Obviously got to the Wimbledon final years ago against Nadal, but was a semifinalist here last year, and we both actually have him winning the Rafael Nadal quarter. And if anybody who has not won a major who potentially could, we both have him in the semis. I've got Berdych as my primary dark horse. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think Berdych is a great call there because he has a good draw to work with, and out of everyone who hasn't won a slam, I have Berdych going the farthest. Problem is with Berdych is I can't see him pulling off an upset over a top guy because he's played all the top guys so many times. They're so familiar with his game. He has nothing that can surprise them, and I think that makes it hard for him to upset someone. So for my primary dark horse, I'm going with Nishikori. Even though I expect him to lose to Wawrinka in the quarters, I'm going with Nishikori because there is that chance that he finds that form. He has the game that can beat those top guys. So if someone's going to win their first slam at this tournament, I think it's Nishikori. But yeah, I agree with you that out of all the guys who haven't won a slam yet, Berdych will go the farthest.
And I want to get a couple of other dark horse picks, namely the dark horse, if you will, the guy who might have the greatest potential to get the furthest between seeds number 11 and 20. I'm actually going with John Isner, and I realize he's in a dangerous part of the draw, and in Djokovic's quarter there, they could match up very early on, but I have to say this has nothing to do with the Justin Gimelstob appointment as coach. I just think John might have an opportunity. It looks like he's got a couple of wins that he can get under his belt, and it's just a you never know type of opportunity against Djokovic. And then I would also like his chance against Raonic if they do play, if the seed holds true there to get through there. So do I think it'll happen? Absolutely not. Who is my pick as a dark horse between seeds 11 and 20? It's John Isner. How about yourself?
Well, I already mentioned I have Anderson going to the quarterfinals, and so I got to go with Anderson there. It's a pretty straight path for him, at least to the round of 16. I mean, maybe Gasquet could give him some problems, but I think at worst he's in the second week. But Isner's a great pick there. He has that interesting matchup with Bautista Agut potentially in the third round. I like that pick. I think it's tough beating Djokovic best of 5 as a big server. I'd like Isner beating Djokovic in best of 3. Best of 5 with no fifth set tiebreak makes it a lot tougher, but he's certainly capable of it. That's not a match that Djokovic can look past at all.
A good point against Bautista Agut beforehand, but I think I'll go back to I cover Cincinnati every year, and back-to-back pressers 3 years ago, Del Potro and Nadal came in, and they were both saying, John Isner, nobody wants to play this guy. When he's on, and I'm thinking, okay, the number one player at the world at the time is saying this. Another very big guy who causes problems is saying this. And John Isner, what do you hear what these guys are saying? I mean, that carries a heck of a lot of weight. It's almost like a Karlovic, if you will, where you see his name and you're like, I really don't want this to be happening. But as you mentioned, inside the United States, wow, that's a nightmare. Outside, maybe not so much, but if John is able to find something, you never know. And at this point, Jared, want to get your thoughts on maybe who might have the potential to go the furthest, seeds 21 to 32. I'm going with somebody who would actually face my dark horse Berdych in the round of 16. You mentioned you're not picking him to win his next match against Tomic, but I'm going with Kohlschreiber. I just think that the veteran could cause some trouble for for a number of guys. If he's able to get through Tomic, he's got either Groth or Kalkanakis, and I think he can get through that, and obviously would then either have Burdich, Melzer, Troitsky, Meyer. I mean, a lot of guys there. But if I have to pick somebody 21 to 32, I'm going with Coley. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, when the draw came out, or when the seeds came out, and I looked at who's seeded 21 to 32, I thought, boy, this is an incredibly weak group. You have guys like Pablo Cuevas, who's never won a match in Melbourne in his career, only made it to the main draw twice. He has a rank. He's seeded basically because he won some challengers on clay and a couple 250s on clay, and now he's seeded at a Grand Slam on hard. I mean, this is a really weak group. I don't have a single one of them making it to the second week. I have Tomic making it to the second week unseeded, but no one seeded between 21 to 32 making it to the second week. Also, I think Query Pospisil, the winner of that, will make it to the second week. I'd go with, I guess, Gasquet if I had to pick someone, but I think he's going to lose to Anderson. He's been in the slump lately. It's just a really weak group there. And maybe some of the guys who could potentially make some noise, like a Shardy, he has better in the third round. So, it's a tough draw for him. This group doesn't have anything that I think can make it to the second week.
Yeah, well, Kyrgios, you mentioned, you had him winning a few matches there too, so he'd sort of be tied with the other guys, if you will, the unseeded players who could go the furthest. So that would be, my next question: the unseeded, who would get the furthest? I'd have to go with Kyrgios at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I have three different unseeded players into the second week. I'll go with Tomic. Just because there's some of those doubts there with Kyrgios on the back. But, yeah, if he gets past Karlovic, I think he's definitely into the second week. I'll go with Tomic. And the other guys, as we mentioned, are Pospisil and Query to look out for. They can both do well. Sure.
And really quickly, obviously, we've got the women's, the WTA Australian Open going on right now. I wanted to see who your thoughts might be on who our champion will be and what the semifinals would look like at this point, or just give a champion overall.
Yeah, I mean, the semifinals, I think three of them are pretty straightforward. Hopefully they're straightforward. Serena Williams, Simona Halep, and Maria Sharapova. I think those top three seeds shouldn't have any problems getting through the semi, especially for Sharapova and Halep. We saw their draws open up a lot yesterday. A lot of seeds went down. And the interesting section is Petra Kvitova's, and she also has Agnieszka Radwanska in her section. I have Andrea Petkovic actually coming out of that section. So going a little bit outside the box, they're going with a clay quarter to make it to the semifinals of a hard court slam. Not sure how that's going to play out. I just think Petra Kvitova plays such a high-risk game. It's hard for me to see her making a run at the Australian Open. Perhaps Radwanska could make it to the semifinals, but I'm going with Petkovic.
Nice, I like the call. I actually thought she was going to do better in one of the warm-up tournaments, and she lost early on. And my take on her is she's absolutely playing with house money. She thought about hanging it up maybe about a year and a half ago with injuries and just lack of motivation, and she came around, played very well, and I think she's number 12 or 13 right now. So that's dangerous person when they're enjoying it at the moment, if you will, and not living and breathing it, which she's doing. So I like your call there. I really do.
Yeah, and then the other person in that section that'll be interesting is Madison Keys. I'd love to see her take on Petra Kvitova. That would be a third round matchup. So I'm hoping both of them get some early round wins so that matchup does happen. That would be a lot of fun. But then my semifinal picks, I have Serena beating Petkovic, and then Halep over Sharapova in a rematch of that Roland Garros final. And then in the final, I have Serena winning it. So that's my picks for the women's side.
Yeah, I'm not that far off. I've got Serena over Radwanska, who will take out Kvitova in the in the quarter. And then on the bottom, I've got Maria and Halep, and that was a Roland Garros final. Actually, I saw the two of them match up a brilliant three-setter on Grandstand Court in Cincinnati last August, and to show you how huge of a match that was, I can't remember who Federer was playing on Stadium at the time, but yours truly was watching the Sharapova-Halep match instead of a Federer match, just because, I mean, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. It was nice when a match like that is not on the main stadium, and it was roaring from point one, and the tennis did not disappoint. Unfortunately for Halep, Maria does have her number, much like Serena has Maria's number. It's almost the same scenario. I've got Serena Williams, again, taking out Radwanska in the top, and I've got Sharapova over Halep on the bottom, and then I've got Serena Williams, sort of business as usual. Unfortunately, it's a broken record against Sharapova, but I do think Maria will get there as well.
Yeah, I like those picks. That'll be exciting to see, and what you said just reminded me. It's a great tournament they have in Cincinnati. You know very well as someone who frequently attends. But I mean, having the joint event, if you have a lineup that's so stacked that a rematch of the Roland Garros final isn't on Stadium, right, shows you have a great tournament. And it's not a Grand Slam; it's best 2 out of 3. Guys are playing every single day, no day off. I think in a lot of ways, some of these 1000s and Premier Mandatories can be more exciting than the Slams. Cincinnati is such a great tournament.
Yeah, it really is. I've covered it since 2009, and it's just a pleasure to be there. And you, as you mentioned, I mean, even I think 2007, 2008 is when they changed, when guys started getting the buys, the top 8. But you look at some of the first round matches in the Masters 1000, and it's just it's a dogfight right from the get-go. There is no time to relax. You've got some serious matchups right out of the gate, and then whomever the top 8 player is who gets the bye gets somebody who already has a match under their belt, who's used to the conditions and the weather and all the above. And there are some absolute blockbusters. Some of the draws at both Cincinnati and Toronto have been just remarkable. And you nailed it, Jared. I mean, Maria Sharapova, Simona Halep, Roland Garros final is not on Stadium in Cincinnati. That's how loaded that schedule was that particular day.
Yeah, well, play is about to get underway for day 2 of the Australian Open. So this is going to be a fun day. Really looking forward to the matchup. Almagro and Nishikori stepping on court right now. Boy, that's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. And, I really appreciate you being on board today, Jared. Look forward to talking with you early next week with respect to what we've seen for the first week at the Australian Open. And we'll be able to promote this a little bit more in advance this time around, have some people call in and get it going the way it needs to be. So for that in mind, this has been the first edition of the second season of Passing Shots on the Pro 10 Radio Network. And on behalf of Jared Pine of the Second Serve, Alex Ramirez, and Pete Ziebron of Tennis Acumen, I wish you good night, good evening, and tune in to the 2015 Australian Open. Good night.
We need to get some sleep, get red eyes. Jordan, you can ask Dad for bacon?
I found it.
Did you read how much it takes?